Hey, what's up guys? Mr. Chris here with Infotainment.com. We got our 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma here again for you. We're doing an upgrade on some OEM Bedlights on our truck here. This install is going to cover the 2016 and 17 model Toyota Tacoma. So let's get into the install. Alright, so you need the kit that you get from Toyota, which includes the lights, the main harness, some zip ties, and a little bit of hardware. Some things that you'll need for the install are a panel tool for when we get inside the vehicle, as well as a set of pliers. I have a 10mm on an extension, and I'm going to use an impact, but basically a 10mm socket, a Phillips bit or Phillips screwdriver, some wire cutters or flush cuts for the zip ties, a drill with a series of drill bits. I believe it's a 7/64 drill bit, and then a 7/16, which I'm using a unibit, but I'm actually going to do it a different way. So I'm going to use a small hole saw, and I'll show you how I'm going to implement this instead of using what they recommend. Our install, or our kit rather, didn't come with the install instructions, so we had to print this out online. If you follow what we're gonna do, you technically don't need this, but what you would need is the printout of the template that you're gonna mark your bed with. So if you don't print out the whole thing, at the very least, just print out that template that you find online. And I'm also gonna use a squirt bottle and some paper towels, and lastly, some protection. So I got a mat for the floor to lay on, my gloves, and some safety glasses. Alright, so where I'm going to start at is the tail lights. I'm going to remove both passenger and driver tail light, and that's basically removing this very top, or not the very top, but the second to the top 10mm bolt, as well as the very bottom 10mm bolt. Reach your fingers in there and you can pull the tail light towards the rear. There's a couple of grommets back here, these plastic grommets that these pins fall into. And just take a little tug and that'll pop them right out. And from here, I'll actually unscrew all the bulbs. Set that out of the way. Now we'll move over to the passenger side and do the same thing. Alright, so for the next step, we're going to need that template that I was talking about earlier, and basically you're going to need to cut this out. On the template itself, it's listed as passenger side, driver side. It's going to be 2 pages that you'll print, and once you cut it out, it says align the bottom edges to the inside of your bed here, the composite area right here. And basically what I did is I pre-cut one for the driver's side, and I put some painter's tape on there, and as you see, it has 2 arrows that you would align on the inside of your bed here. Now if you want to save paper, you can reuse this one that you did for the driver's side. All you have to do is reverse the tape and spin it over and use the same holes that you made doing it on the driver's side. But if not, yeah, let's use the passenger side. Alright, once you have your template out, the tape is on there, you can go ahead and line that up on your bed here. And it doesn't have to be anything super perfect. Basically, your light is just going to sit within this area. You want to make sure it's kind of lined up, you know, on both sides so it doesn't look kind of weird for you. But once your template is lined up, you can go ahead and grab that 7/64 drill bit that it recommends. Throw it in a drill, and you're just going to want to drill each one of those dots right through. And be mindful, your bed is made out of a composite. It's like a fiberglass mixture, so when you start drilling, there's going to be a lot of dust that's coming out of there. You don't want to breathe any of that stuff in, and this is actually why I have my water bottle. I'm going to try and wet it down a little bit and prevent any of that dust from really going anywhere. All right. So from here, I'm going to wet this down a little bit, just with some plain water. And I'll go through the top and through the bottom. All right, now we have our mounting holes drilled. For that center hole, we're going to do something a little different. I still am going to use the 7/64 drill bit to go all the way through, but I'm going to use a 3/4 inch hole saw, because instead of cutting these wires, I'm going to try and make a hole just big enough so I can fish the connector through. Now you can unpin this harness, pull the pins out by removing the little plastic clip inside. I'm going to avoid doing that and cutting the wires, so we'll see how this works out for me. It really doesn't matter how big you make the hole, as long as it's smaller than your entire light. Nobody's really going to see how big the hole is behind the light. So I'll wet this down again. You always want to drill slow speed with pressure. There we go. Let's see if my connector fits in there. Yep, perfect. So we'll go ahead and drill these same holes on the passenger side, and then we can move on to mounting the lights. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. All I did was flip over my template that I used for the driver's side, and I'll do those 3 holes. All right, so now that we got our holes drilled, what you can do is grab your bed light, and you want to make sure you grab the right bed light for the right side. So if you notice on the back side, we have a rubber grommet here, and it is labeled, as well as the light itself is also labeled. So just make sure that you grab the passenger side for the passenger side. On our light, we have the attached loom. This all came pre-assembled from the factory. This rubber grommet right here, we don't need, so I'm not going to use this. You can pull it all the way down and kind of stretch it over the connector if you want to save it for something else, or you can just go ahead and cut it off with a flush cut. All right, once you remove that grommet, take your connector and wire, and you can just feed it down into the hole you just made. Alright, now when you get to mounting your light, they're angled towards the front, and they're also bigger on top. So you don't want to have them aiming the other way, because they'll just kind of shoot out into nothing. When they're aiming towards the front, it'll kind of light up inside of that bed. Alright, so from this point, you want to grab the supplied stainless steel Phillips screws. You'll need 2 for this side as well as the other side. And you'll grab your Phillips bit. It is kind of a tight hole, so make sure you have a Phillips screwdriver that can fit in there. Line it up, and then you can kind of screw it down a little bit. You don't want to over tighten these, because it is just going into the composite bed. If you over tighten it, you'll strip out that composite, and you won't have a tight light. All right, now that we got this side secure, let's move over to the driver's side and repeat the same steps. All right, now that we got our lights mounted, what we can do is move to the tail light cavity here. You'll notice that you have a pretty large hole right here. In that hole, you should be able to kind of stick your finger in there and feel around and feel those wires, or that wire loom that we ran into that hole. Basically, you're just going to want to pull that wire loom through here so that it's inside of the tail light cavity. Remove any slack. From that point, you want to run the wire straight down into that hole that your tail light wiring is coming up through. Alright, now that we got that ran through that tail light wiring hole here, basically what we're going to be doing is following the factory tail light wiring, the loom. We're going to be following that with our newly added wiring loom, and we're just going to zip tie it all along the side there. So grab the supplied zip ties and get yourself your cutters, and we'll head underneath the truck and we'll start running that over to the driver's side. Alright, now looking up from underneath the rear of the truck here, you can see our wire hanging down here. You see our harness. We're actually not going to follow this harness completely. I'm going to run it inside of the rear cavity here, right across to the other side. So I'll just kind of straighten this wire and loom out and stick it through, grab it on the other side, and then you can pull the slack out. Just like that there. And on this side is where I'm going to attach some zip ties. Alright, now I'm going to move on to the driver's side. I'm going to bring the driver's side loom right down to the same location here so we can connect it to our main harness and run it to the front. Alright, we're going to grab that same wire and pull it through that hole on the driver's side. Alright, now that we got that through that hole, since we're up here, we don't need these tail lights to be off anymore. We'll go ahead and put the driver and passenger tail light back on. Alright, let's jump over to the passenger side and reinstall that tail light. Alright, we got the taillights back in. Grab your main harness, which is the last of the wiring that you'll need, and let's head back underneath the truck. Underneath the truck on the driver's side, we're going to do the same thing that we did on the passenger side and run it into that channel right there. Kind of pull the slack out. We'll go ahead and throw a zip tie on it. All right, and from here, you have your two connectors for your driver and passenger side bed light. And we'll grab the main harness right here, and we'll connect these up. It doesn't matter which one goes where, they're both the same thing. And with the remaining slack on these wires, I'm just gonna kind of loop it up and zip tie it onto the main harness here. All right, so now you're left with your one main loom here, Basically, we're just going to take this and follow this large main harness all the way towards the front. We're just going to zip tie it along the way, running it over all of the frame channels and basically kind of keeping it looking just like the factory wires do. Alright, and as your other harnesses also had a grommet, this one does as well. You want to keep this grommet installed though. You don't want to remove this one because you're going to use it to run the wire up into the cab of the truck. So it might be a little bit of a pain to route the wire with that grommet on there, but it's definitely doable. From here, instead of going over the gas tank, following that loom all the way forward, you can do that if you want to. I'm actually going to come outside of the frame channel. So I'm going to get the loom and go straight to the side right through here. And that's going to put my wire right in that tire well area, kind of right over the axle. That's where I want it. Alright, from here I'm going to be running it forward, actually going behind the tire well there. There's your fuel tank fill tube right behind that portion of the tire well. I'm going to go right above that and keep going forward on the outside of the frame channel from here. Alright, so from here I'm going to loop the loom kind of like this to help me run it. So I'm just going to squeeze it a little bit, keeps it a little bit more rigid. And from here I'm going to take the tire well, pull it back slightly, and I'm going to fish it right over the fuel fillers. As you can see it coming down here. Alright, just like that. And then where this body mount is, I'm going to go right up through the body mount. There's a opening there. I'm going to run it right across. Alright, from here I'm going to run this wire on top of the frame, right on top here. It's kind of hard to see, but that harness that we were zip tying it to in the rear is actually sitting right on top of here, and it's running to the front. So and basically I'm just going to work it forward, zip tying along the way. You got much better access coming on the inside of the frame here. All right, now when you get to around the driver door area, you'll see a grommet right here. That is the grommet that we're gonna access and run that wire in there. So we're gonna have to work from the inside of the truck now, but we're gonna run this wire up through there and pull this grommet up into that hole. So we're actually not gonna use that one. We're just gonna pop this one through to seal up that hole. All right, so from here, when you reach that grommet underneath, you're gonna open your driver door and you're gonna wanna remove the door sill plate here. Just pop straight up, set that out of the way. The grommet is kind of right underneath the rear of the front seat here. So you can stick your hand in there. Now this is gonna be different for the access cab, but on our 4-door truck here, that's where our grommet is. So kind of tight in there, but just big enough so you can fit your hand in there. You can feed the wire up through that hole where you just removed the factory grommet. And pull that loom, the rest of it, right up into your cab. And the grommet does move, so you can move it around a little bit if there's too much slack. Pull it back. All right. And once you got your wire good, you can go ahead and seat your grommet. Make sure it's seated all around. Right, and we'll pull our wire up through. So what you can do is you can pop these little plastic flaps up and run the wire in there. Snap that back down to keep it a nice factory looking install. Just like that. All right, once you get your wire up to your kick panel, we'll need to pull the kick panel. The wires that we need are behind here. And it's just that little plastic nut, kinda. You just kind of spin it off, pull that aside. And then for the kick panel, there's 2 plastic retaining clips going towards the side. So you'll want to grab it and pull it towards the side. And you'll see those clips. If you pull straight back, it will come off. But these will be stuck in their holes, which might be right there. In order to get it off, you'll just have to use your panel tool to pop those back out, and then you can slide it back in there. But to avoid that, just pull it towards the center of the vehicle and you should be fine. Inside the kick panel, the plug that you're going to be looking for is this white plug right here. And the wire we're looking for is pin 14. It's going to be a light green wire. It is that wire right there. We're going to need this. This is our power source, and we're actually getting the power source from the factory bedlight switch. So the switch that's in your dash, as you see here, when you turn on right now, will turn on your third brake light, white lights that are in it. After you connect your bedlights to it, this will turn on all 3 lights. It'll turn on the 2 bedlights we just installed and the top light. So it's kind of like a triangle of light that you'll have inside of your bed. The nice thing is it also works with the door. So if you have it set on door, when you open your door, or I believe when you unlock your vehicle as well, your interior lights turn on, you can have those bed lights as well as your third brake light also turn on. So that's pretty cool. And having dash access to turn on your bed lights is pretty cool also, without having to install any switches. You already have one pre-installed. All right, and the other wire you're going to be looking for is the ground. And right here, this big junction right here, these are all ground wires. All these white with black stripe wires, as you can see, they go into this little junction box and they get bolted right into your kick panel. So basically, you're just going to need to grab one of these white with black stripe. I wouldn't choose the larger gauge wires just because the Scotch lock that they included with your kit is made for smaller gauge wires. And actually, I'll demonstrate how to use this, how you use the Scotch lock on my wire here. So basically, acting as this, as if this red wire was our white with black if that was our ground. You have your Scotch lock here. It has a loop kinda on one side. It's an open end, and on the other side you're gonna have a single hole. It's only on one side. This Scotch lock will slide over the wire. The wire will kind of clip in there, and this would be our ground wire that's in there. Then you'll get the wire that you're tapping into it and just slide it in. You have a little window there that you can see the wire when it reaches the end. And basically what you're going to do from there is crimp it down with your pliers. And when you do that, this little metal center section has notches in it that's going to cut into the wire but not cut all the way through it. It's just going to kind of splice into that wire, making a connection. And then from there you fold the little door over and it'll clip into place, and that'll be a nice secure connection for your ground. So I'll go ahead and do that now so you can see what I was saying. All right, as you can see, it's over the wire, and I will stick the ground wire in there, and that's all the way through. Now I'll just press that down with my fingers a little bit just to kind of hold it in. And I'll take the pliers and press it all the way down. And as you can see, it's spliced in to our ground wire, and it is locked into our ground wire for our lights. Now we can take that and snap the little door closed, and we have a secure connection there. Now for the red wire, they do include a blue T-tap, which has the same principle as the Scotch lock as far as splicing into the wire. The colors designate what size gauge of wire that you'll be using. So because this wire is on the smaller size, I'm actually going to use the pink Scotch lock as opposed to the T-tap. Now, not to say that this won't make a good connection, but if it's just a little too loose, it might not be 100% on there. And I don't want to chance anything, so I'm going to use the pink Scotch lock for this wire as well. Slide that in there, and our wire is pre-set up for the T-tap type, so I'm going to have to just cut this off with my flush cuts. All right, we'll stick that in there, just like we did the ground. All right, now go ahead and plug that back in. From this point, you're going to be left with some excess wire here. You can take it, zip tie it up. I'm going to zip tie this up here, and I'm going to coil all this up, zip tie it, and I'm going to try and stuff it in a location that's out of the way so it's not going to interfere with me putting my kick panel back in place. All right, from here we're ready to put our kick panel back in place. And the little plastic nut, you don't have to twist it on, you just kind of press it in place and you'll feel it get real tight. All right, we'll throw our door sill back on. All right, let's go test it out. All right, so we just wrapped up our install. And like I mentioned earlier, this covers 16 and 17 Toyota Tacomas, the crew cab model. If you have an access cab, the wiring will be a little bit different. We'll try and include a couple of snapshots of the specific wiring for your truck because the location is a little bit different as well as the color is a little bit different. But yeah, with that said, our bed lights are working. They work with your remote control when you hit unlock, just like your interior lights when they're set to door. They'll illuminate when you hit the unlock button, and they'll turn off when you hit the lock button. So that's really convenient if you're walking up to your truck at night and you got to load something in the bed. You unlock your truck, that'll illuminate your bed. You don't have to go into your truck to turn the button on or anything. You have that light, basically at your fingertips. So yeah, if you enjoyed this install, come back to infotainment.com for more.